Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. Be sure to visit us at wargamesdelivered.com to get the paints, miniatures, and supplies used in this video, and also to refer a friend. You'll get a $10 discount, and so will they. And with that, let's get started. In this video, we will be continuing our batch painting tutorial series, finishing the early war Fallschirmjäger from yesterday's video. Be sure to watch part 1 in the link below on how we painted these minis. Once you've given your speed paint enough time to dry, you'll want to varnish your minis. With the speed paint 1.0, I like to wait a whole day, a whole 24 hours before I varnish them, just to be sure there's no chance of paint reactivating. You can use a spray can of varnish if you don't have an airbrush for this step. I would recommend using a spray varnish outside if possible, or in a well-ventilated area. If you do have an airbrush, my recommendation for this step is to mix a bit of the airbrush medium in with the varnish, as well as a bit of water to really thin it down, and use an old brush to mix all that paint together. It might be easier if you mix this in a separate container, but you can mix it in your airbrush as well if you use a gravity feed like I do here. Now that the varnish is mixed for the airbrush, we can start applying the varnish to each model in the squad. Be sure to use short, small spurts of varnish while keeping the air flowing through your airbrush to dry the varnish as soon as it is applied to the model. Go ahead and repeat this step for all 5 minis in your squad, and then once you finish this step on all your models, give them about an hour to dry to really let the varnish set in. Now that everything is dry, we can move on to basing the squad. When using Army Painter basing materials, I like to mix the brown battleground and the steep grass for a quick and effective realistic base. You can also add the battlefield rocks in for a bit of variation on each base as well. And when using the battlefield glue here, I like to dot the easy to reach areas of the base and use an old brush or a sculpting tool to move the glue around and get every area of the base that we can. You do have quite a bit of drying time with this glue, but I still prefer to go one by one on the bases to avoid wasting any glue or letting it dry. The Army Painter battlefield glue will dry matte and transparent, so don't worry too much if you get a bit of glue on the boots of the minis. After the basing material is down, this really won't be an issue. And again, if you don't want to use a brush for this step, you can absolutely use a sculpting tool. It can damage your brushes, so just keep that in mind. I have an old kind of ratty brush here, so that's kind of good for these things and dry brushing and whatnot. So it's always good to have a couple old brushes around. Don't always throw away all of your old quote-unquote useless brushes. Once the minis have been varnished and given time to dry, they are absolutely safe to pick up at this point. So we'll carefully just submerge them in the basing material, and I like to let these sit to dry before I tap off any excess basing material. So we'll let this one dry and give it about 20 minutes or so. Just kind of wait until the whole squad is done, and then we'll go ahead and tap off any of that excess basing material just sitting on the base there. And really it's just rinse and repeat this step for the remaining models and add rocks and tufts for more variety and interesting textures as you go. If you do decide to add any battlefield rocks, I would recommend adding them before you apply the rest of the basing material. This way you have a bit of drying time with the glue to adjust the rock if you need to. With the battlefield glue, you can kind of slide them on the base a bit, so you have a little bit of wiggle room and time to work with them and really set up the angle that you want them on. And to that point, if you're going to put tufts on your base, I would wait until the basing material has actually dried and then glue the tufts on top of the basing material. And lastly here, we will pull out the wet palette to paint the rim of each base. Using matte black from the acrylic line, thin this down with a bit of water and use about 2 thin coats for a nice even finish. You can use any color really to paint the rim. I prefer black on most of my minis and my armies, but I do like to use browns and greens for certain armies. You guys may have noticed in the previous videos I use a kind of reddish brown rim for my Song of Ice and Fire miniatures, so it really just kind of depends on the game for me. And another small tip before we go is I prefer to do the first coat of the matte black on all of the bases. So this way, by the time you're finished with the last one, the first one that you did should be dry and ready for a second coat. So always keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're batch painting. Always try to find small ways to save your time painting to get more time for gaming. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. And also be sure to check out the top link in the description below to take part in the giveaway. Thanks again, guys, and happy wargaming.